A warning about this episode. It starts with Australians having a good time. The band is the Angels. The drummer, a Kiwi music legend.
And I just auditioned with everybody else and got it. One of those magic moments.
Musician and music promoter Brent Eccles has just turned 70. He talks the state of the industry.
You know, the support for New Zealand artists, particularly live, has dried up.
Being named #1 promoter in the world.
It's like stunned silence on what?
And what he thinks about dynamic pricing for concert tickets.
But I don't think it sits well with Kiwis.
Welcome to the NBR Podcast. I'm your host, Simon Shepherd. This episode, a different kind of business, music. That's the opening riff from Kiwi group Citizen Band and their 1979 song, Rust in My Car. Brent Eccles, on the drums, had been in bands since high school, but now he is celebrating more than 50 years in the industry. How would you describe the current state of New Zealand music?
Well, of New Zealand music, specifically New Zealand artists, I mean, it's reasonable. I think it's been stronger. I think there are not so many new acts coming through. You know, the support for New Zealand artists, particularly live, has dried up, and it's kind of difficult. You know, I think the last real big act we saw was really 660, and before that, Lord. Yeah. Before that, Flight of the Conchords. They're real high-profile artists who've gone out to do massive business and tour the world. But, you know, recently I think it's sort of dried up a bit. Do
you have any idea why? Is it the acts aren't coming through, people aren't promoting them, people aren't wanting to go see bands? What is it?
Well, I'm talking specifically about New Zealand artists. So it's just going through a phase, I think, where it's become, you know, there's perhaps a new artists coming through, but they haven't quite broken yet.
Right.
You know, artists like Cassie Henderson and Frankie Venter and artists you may not have heard of, but they're sort of slowly coming through. They're kind of, you know, 100 to 200 capacity venues. And then you hope that they have some success at radio and then online, and then that breaks to, you know, 1,000 to 2,000.
Is it a hand-to-mouth existence still for those kinds of artists?
Yes, terribly. Yeah, it's very tough.
Very tough.
Very tough, yeah.
And when you're trying to promote them and sell out their gigs, have you noticed that the cost of living, for example, is dampening people's appetite for live music?
I think there's still an appetite for it, and it surprises me, you know, how much people will pay for some shows. And you know, on the international side of things, it's very, very busy. Yeah. And you know, ticket prices don't seem to have changed. It blows my mind as to how much money is being spent on entertainment right now. You know? Really? Yeah, when it's supposedly we're in a tough time. You know.
And people spend a lot of money on it.
Yes, they do.
But on an international act.
Yes, not so much on local.
Really?
Yeah, and it's become expensive to tour in New Zealand, much more expensive than it was like 2 years ago.
All right, a change in direction now. Why aren't you coming our way, Tay? Well, that's right. One of the biggest pop stars on the planet appears to have shaken off Aotearoa.
This is exhausting, you know, like we are never getting back together, like ever.
Let's jump into this. Is that one of the reasons that some international artists aren't coming here, or is that a venue issue?
Oh, that's, you know, that's the whole Taylor Swift thing, and I understand that totally. I mean, she came to Australia, and you know, she did Sydney and Melbourne, didn't play Adelaide, Perth, or Brisbane or Auckland.
Right.
You know, I understand why she did 3 or 4 shows in one place in such a massive production. I think artists are being choosy about coming here. The cost of freight and the general cost of doing business here is quite difficult. But if they want to come and play to the fans in New Zealand, you can't do it from Australia.
Yep. And is the Taylor Swift not coming here just created a perception that nobody wants to come here? Because we are having people like Coldplay coming here, for example, and others.
It's just a perception.
It's a perception.
It was a good story at the time.
Let's blame the media for that one, shall we? In terms of the local artists, we're looking for that next breakthrough, as you say. But is it the same old conundrum for New Zealand artists as for actors and for businesses that to be really successful, you've got to get that international cut through?
Look, I think the first thing you need to be driven.
driven.
You need to be, you just need to really, really understand what you want to do and why you want to do it, and take no prisoners on the way through. It's a really tough game. So you've got to be. Kaylee Bell's a great example of someone who's really driven and won't stop. And she spends half her time in Nashville trying to break the rest of the world. She's done well in New Zealand and Australia. She's the highest streamed female country artist in Australasia. But she she's not about to rest on her laurels. She's spends a lot of time in Nashville, and to go to Nashville sounds great, but you got to
takes a lot of money, and that's right.
There's a lot of trips to and from New Zealand. So, and you've got to really understand why you want to do it and go for it. And you can do it, but there's a lot of hurdles on the way.
So that brings me back to this point. How does it compare, or has it changed in terms of that struggle to break through as to when you started out a while ago in the 70s?
Yeah. I think it has changed a lot in terms of marketing. The record labels reigned supreme in New Zealand when I first started. There were probably 6 or 7 companies that were active in New Zealand with branches in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch.
Right, physical branches.
Yeah,
wow.
Physical branches, And, they did very, very, very well. But things have changed an awful lot now.
So who reigns supreme? If the record labels don't reign supreme anymore, who reigns supreme now?
The promoters, supposedly.
The promoters.
But really, that flows back into the agents and the artists. The artists really hold the power these days. The once upon a time, the labels really, really made an awful lot of money out of international artists and local artists too. But that's sort of moved now to live. And the perception is that, that's where the money is. So it's with the promoters. It's not actually. It's actually back with the artist or the agents.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Not you as a promoter or as a touring.
It's tough.
It's tough.
Because the artists have so much power and the people that represent them drive such a hard deal, it's become very difficult to make any money out of live touring. So the margins are small. You've got to be very careful, and it's a question of capacity, ticket prices, all those things, the long game. It's not a short game at all. For a promoter, it's a long game, and win as much as you can. You don't win them all, but the margins are slim.
As we mentioned earlier, Brent Eccles has spent 5 decades playing in bands. In New Zealand, there was Vox Pop and glam rock quartet Space Waltz. And the most successful, Citizen Band, which eventually led to Eccles drumming for Aussie rockers, the Angels. It's been a long game for you, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to take you back to how you ended up in Aussie and auditioned for that iconic rock band, the Angels. How did you get into the Angels?
Well, I went to, was my second time to Australia. First time was with a band called Space Waltz, an absolute disaster when I was 19. But the second time was with Citizen Band, and we spent, 2 or 3 years there, working real hard. And did okay, but it got to us in the end. And I just heard that there was a position going in the Angels for a drummer, and I just auditioned with everybody else and got it. One of those magic moments. I always say that was, I was the first drummer after lunch. So they were fresh.
Right.
Plus, what I had done was I had charted their songs. I'd actually written drum charts for all their songs, so I didn't know the band that well.
Okay.
So with 3 songs, Marseille, Take a Long Line, and Shadowboxer were the 3 songs, and I played them perfectly.
Yeah.
They looked at me and went, wow, who's this guy? And, because I was, unknown to them, it was good for them to find someone fresh and new. So I think that all helped me, and that was the start of a 20-year career.
20 years with the Angels. They were iconic. I grew up in Australia listening to you play the drums.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. But at the same time, you're looking to do other stuff as well.
Well, I always thought the position I was in, which was, touring a high profile in Australia and the world, was keep your eyes open and meet as many people as you can, which I did. So, and I always had kind of a business thing going on in my head. I ended up managing the Angels for 10 years.
Oh, you actually managed the Angels as well.
That's right. Yeah. Don't tell them. Yeah, I did. And that was an interesting dichotomy. But then
playing and managing at the same time?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Do you have to tell yourself off?
Yeah, kind of. Well, you change roles depending on what you're doing. But and I was just, I worked in radio as well, doing the homegrown show. So I got exposed to a lot of new talent in Australia. And I came across Johnny Diesel and the Injectors, and I convinced him to come to Sydney. And they came across by bus.
It's a long way.
It's a long way. It's a long way. And to start it from scratch, and I didn't really know what I was doing management-wise, but I brought them into the company that managed the Angels, Dirty Pool, and John Woodruff, and we co-managed together. And long story short, we ended up, first album sold 400,000 physical copies.
Yeah. What are they?
This was in days of vinyl.
Yeah.
And anyway, we got signed to Chrysalis and toured the world, all kinds of things, learned an awful lot, but it got taken away from me.
Yeah.
Long story that, but it did. Learned some real lessons, and then I managed a couple of other bands after that. And then the whole thing kind of slowed down, and I, for family reasons, wanted to come back to New Zealand, which I did in 2000.
Right. And that's when you set up Eccles Entertainment.
That's right, yeah. We started from scratch.
Was that hard? Did people know you because of the Angels and because of what you'd done with Diesel and the Injectors?
Yes.
So you had a launching pad there to do that.
Yes, I did. So I didn't have to kick any doors down, but they didn't know me as a promoter.
Right.
But so we set up in our house in Mount Eden, which I still live there. The first tour we did was Tim Finn, Beck Runga and Dave Dobbin. Tim, Beck and Dave.
Yeah.
And everyone said we were crazy, that New Zealand talent doesn't work. You can't tour it. We did theatres, and it ended up being the highest grossing tour of any tour of the year. And we sold out, we think we did 3 or 4 civic theatres. We sold it out and added another 2 weeks. It was incredible. And that was my calling card.
Yep.
From there. And then I picked up the representation of the Frontier Touring Company in New Zealand. So I had the international arm and the local arm as well.
Yep.
And that continues on today.
So you're still with Frontier, and obviously you still have Brent Eccles, and you've represented, not only the big names that you just talked about, like Tim Finn, but also like his brother Neil Finn and others.
Crowded House.
Crowded House.
We did, but we don't anymore. But we currently Frat Freddy's Drop, 660.
Yep.
Katie Bell, Super Groove, Marlon Williams.
Amazing
very
list.
Strong.
Very strong list of New Zealand artists.
Yeah.
The biggest one?
The biggest.
Is there a biggest artist, or can you not just compare them?
Oh, yeah, 660.
660.
I mean, the fact we sold out Western Springs was a phenomenon, and I'll never forget that day when we went on sale and in the first minute sold 20,000 tickets. It was just, our world just turned upside down. It's like, what happened there? And then that was the pre-sale, and then the on-sale did it again. Another 20,000. Like, what's happening here? And because no one believed that we were going to do it, and we did it, and then we did it again. And then we did Eden Park twice.
Eden Park has been an absolute pleasure.
Is that just about the artist, or is that about how you've promoted the artist?
No, I think that's the artist. I really do. I think it was the artist and the way they connected with New Zealand. When you can't sell 50,000 tickets at Eden Park without a strong connection, a bond. And they had a bond with Kiwis through their music and their style. And they still do, but that was just, that's never going to happen to me again. Well, it might.
Here's hoping. You were looking for that next breakthrough.
Yeah.
660.
Yeah.
Okay. So you came back to New Zealand, you represented, you picked up a lot of artists, and you did the touring, promoting was successful. So I have to bring the C word into it, and that is COVID.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah. So in terms, for an industry that survives, and your job that survives on public performance, it must have been devastating.
Well, no one quite believed it. No one quite believed it was going to happen. We saw what was happening in the rest of the world, and, you'd see someone wearing a mask and go, oh, look at them, it's great. But, and we had 660, I think there were a number of shows outdoors, and the rest of the world was shutting down. And we were open, and it was big news around the world that we were open, and they had footage of the 660 show at Western Springs around the world. 2 weeks later, we shut. Now, if that had happened...
So you went from a massive high to a low, to nothing.
To nothing. And, but, through what had happened in the time that we were open, we were able to sustain ourselves through the time we were closed, didn't lose any staff. We did like everyone else did and dropped the wages to 80% or whatever it was. But we kept everybody. and we kept a great vibe and a good spirit, and we came out the other side, and things definitely changed, and we shut down again, didn't we? Yeah,
You shut down a few times.
that was a harder one.
Yeah. I just want to point out one thing that happened during that time,
Yes.
and let me get this right.
So, yeah,
Summer 2021, you'd had the big summer, right? And then this magazine, Industry Magazine Polestar, named you as the #1 promoter worldwide.
yes.
How did that happen?
Well, to be honest, the rest of the world was shut. But because of 660 and some other things that happened, what Polestar does, it rates you on your gross income and your ticket sales, and they rate you against everyone else in the world. And I got a call one day from them saying, "Oh, hi, it's Bridge from Polestar." Yes. And he said, "I just want to let you know that you're in the top 20 promoters in the world." I went, "What?" He said, "Yeah, you are." He said, "Do you want to take out an ad?" And I said, "Look, I'm not in that. I don't work in that sphere really." But I said, "Interesting." I said, "Where did I come?" I said, "Well, I can't really tell you, but I'd take out an ad if I take out an advertisement if I were you." And I said, "Well, that sounds like top 5. He said, "Well, yeah." He said, "I'll give you a call back." So a couple of days later, he calls back and says, "You're actually #1." It's like stunned silence. I'm what? And I still can't believe it. But we because we were open and we'd had a good run when we shut down, we had the biggest gross and the biggest ticket sales in the world for 2 consecutive periods.
And how long was the period? Like
3 months.
3 months. So for 6 months,
Yes.
you were the #1
Promoter in the world.
thanks to COVID, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, there's a positive story out of COVID then. It's amazing. All right. Let's talk about the bone of contention sometimes that is with fans, and that is ticket prices. The perception is that they've skyrocketed over the years. They have. How do they get set? Explain that. It's not you, it's the artist, is it?
Well,
or is it?
It's very simple, very basic. You do a budget and you put in the artist fee and all the costs and see what's at the bottom and work out your ticket price from there. And you might scale it. You might have 3 ticket prices, 170, 130, 110. And then it goes into the budget and you see what the bottom line is and, what you can make out of it. It's quite simple. So it's really driven by the artist cost.
It's the artist cost.
Artist cost and the cost of putting on the show.
Right. And are those the 2 factors that have been driving ticket prices?
Yes.
And there's nothing we can really do about that as a fan?
I think as promoters, no, as a fan, probably not that much.
As a promoter?
As a promoter, yes. Well, we can moderate that, and I'm very vocal with Frontier about that when we're setting prices for New Zealand, they're not the same prices that we set for Australia. New Zealand's a separate market with a separate economy and different drivers in it, and we need to set the prices accordingly. And I still don't think that's quite done.
Right.
And I think
does it fall on deaf ears? Is it like because they believe that Australia and New Zealand is the same kind of market?
It will fall on deaf ears until the sales look a bit sick and we go, "Why is that?" And you dig it. We go, "Well, it's too expensive, and there are too many shows." That's the other thing. There are probably too many shows. But it's a very competitive market in New Zealand now with 3 really big players in the market.
You are the representative for Frontier.
Yes. Yeah.
But your competitors are who?
Live Nation.
Live Nation.
And TEG, which is really Ticketek and different clothes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's super competitive.
Very competitive, yeah. And that also there's almost an auction for each artist as they come through. Everyone's bidding to get with their agent, and the agent's going to get the highest price they can. It's like selling a house,
right?
And so you got to and the only way to up your guarantee is with the ticket prices. So you need to be charging more and in order to make it work.
Is it cutthroat?
It's very competitive.
Yeah.
A cutthroat, I don't know. We don't mind cutthroat so much. We deal with it all the time. I mean, we deal with things every day. One disaster at a time. Often. But I get on well with other people in the other companies in New Zealand. And that's fine. But it's just very competitive.
Did you get Oasis tickets? The whole country appears to have been brought together in frustration at Ticketmaster So much so that the government has decided to do something about it.
There's another ticketing issue that's troubling music fans. It's called surge or dynamic pricing.
The government has promised to look into dynamic ticket pricing after the cost of tickets for the Oasis reunion tour more than doubled while on sale.
In the UK, Ticketek used it for the recent Oasis reunion tour. You know, you called an Uber here today, and Uber operates this thing during peak demand called surge pricing, so you're going to pay more for your trip. And now we've seen this seem to happen in very big ticket sales. The example is Oasis in the UK with their reunion tour. They use dynamic pricing for its tour tickets. It's copped a lot of flack in the UK, and even the government's wanting to look into it. What do you think about dynamic pricing?
I don't like it personally. I like to set a price and promote that price. I think it's a little unfair, but I guess it's the artist or the agent trying to find their value in the market. Again, almost by an auction process. And some people swear by it. I mean, I think it started with the manager of Celine Dion, maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Okay, it goes back that far.
Meglin was his name. Well, I've met him, but yeah. And that started a whole trend in the industry that, we can make more money this way. But I don't think it sits well with Kiwis. And it's not been successful here.
It hasn't been successful here?
No.
Has it been used here?
It's been used on a couple of things. Yeah, I think it's you have to flick a switch to make it happen, and we don't do it that much.
Right.
Not a
fan. Just before we go, I mean, it just should wrap this up. But looking back, I mean, you've I don't know how many years you would say you've been in the industry, but you started when you were like
about
90. 50.
Yeah.
50 years. And how many years have you been promoting?
25.
25.
Yeah.
And so you've had a lot of exposure to rock and roll behaviour. Does anything really stick out in your mind?
I think one of the most incredible things that happened to me was I got involved with when I came back to New Zealand. I got involved with managing a band called Red Phoenix, and they wanted to make an album. Doc Neeson was the singer from the Angels, wanted to do it, and I suggested a producer who worked in the Bahamas. His name was Terry Manning, so we all flew over there. One of the guys in the band, David Lowe, had his own plane. Flew over there in his own plane, and then did some work there. And I flew back to Los Angeles, and he had to do some work in New York, and he came down to pick me up in LA. We're going to the terminal that has the private jets, and the driver got lost. Which I thought was pretty funny. and we finally found the terminal, and we get in the plane, and we had the new album, and we put the new album. It was the two of us on a private plane.
Yeah.
We put the new album in on the CD player, turned it up full volume. We're drinking scotch as we're taking off from LAX. Just this incredible rock and roll thing. It was the most rock and roll thing I've ever done in my life. It was just amazing. But those things don't happen very often. No.
No, the rock and roll lifestyle is hard work.
Yeah, I mean, the rock and roll lifestyle is still there. Most of the time, though, bands are pretty professional these days. They have to be because of the amount of travel that they're doing and what's at stake, and everyone's watching very closely. So, things still happen behind closed doors, but generally it's sort of cleaned up a fair bit. You've just turning 70, am I allowed to say this? Yes, I am, on Friday.
On Friday, yeah. So when this goes out, you will have turned 70.
I'll be 70, yeah. Who would have thought?
So 25 years promoting, 50 years in the business. Have you still got the passion?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my day is, I get up at 6 and I answer all my overnight emails at 6. I go to my gym or go for a bike ride between 7 and 8 and then go to the office at 9 and then leave the office at 6, come home and have dinner, work between 9 and 10, go to bed. And that's every day, every weekday. So I've still got the passion and I love New Zealand artists. I love working with them. And I suppose the day might come when I lose it, but I don't think it will. I think it's what I do. I just love it too much.
And that's the last note on this episode of the NBR Podcast. Links to all the audio clips used are in the description. Thanks to content producer Jake Latham and creative director Michael Hickmott. For early access to every episode, subscribe at nbr.co.nz. New interviews and issues drop every Tuesday and Thursday. I'm Simon Shepherd. We'll catch you then.